Okay, in this lesson, I'm going to look at how you can use the data you have gathered on the weather for the last 7 days to create a couple of graphs. These graphs can then be used not just to show how the weather has changed, but it can also be used to possibly predict what the weather is going to do in the future. So step one of this task is opening up the spreadsheet that you used to record your data. It should look something like this if you gather data every single day. If you missed some days, you're going to have to predict what you thought it might have been. And the best bet there would be, for example, if you missed day 4 temperature, but you had day 3 and day 5, and you knew one was 4, one was 6, then it's possible that the likely temperature would be a number in between those two numbers. Similarly, if you had 5 and 10 for days 2 and 4, but you'd missed day 3, instead of going with 4, it's probably that the wind speed you could predict had been maybe 7 or 8, which is halfway between 5 and 10. So you'd write one of those numbers in there. Okay. If you've missed the wind direction, I would predict the wind direction from the day before, so go with the same one. And the same with rainfall and cloud cover. So this is for any data that you happen to miss. Once you've got a complete spreadsheet, you now want to start creating your graphs. So let's have a little look at those graphs. So the first graph you're going to want to create is how has my temperature changed? And you'll notice what I've just done there is I've highlighted all of these cells. So let me do that again to show you how to do that. You click on the first one, A1, you hold down your mouse key and you drag it across all the cells like that. Okay, once they're highlighted in gray, as you can see on the screen, I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger so you can see that. You now want to create a graph using this information. So to create that graph, we're going to go over and use this little button over here, which is the Insert Chart button. So what I would now do is click on this. Okay, now at any point, you can rewind this video if you're needing to repeat a step that you might have missed. Now, what has it done? Well, it has created a graph. I'm just going to reduce my screen size again so you can see that. It's created a bar graph. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to make some changes. I don't want a bar graph. I actually want a line graph because temperature is always shown using a line graph. So I'm going to change by going over to what's called the chart editor. Now, if the chart editor doesn't show, so for example, it's like that, all you need to do is click on the graph twice, double click as it's called, and it'll bring up your chart editor. And I can then change my chart type. It's this button here I'm going to press, and I can scroll down. I'm just going to use the little bar to pull down, and there's a line graph. That's what I want. I want to create a line graph. So now we've got a line graph for our 7 days. Okay. So one final thing is this isn't a very good title, temperature, nor is this a very good axis label. So I'm going to want to change these. So let's go to this tab, which says Customize. This allows me to change parts of my graph. So I'm going to want to change some titles. So if I look down, you can see there's one called Chart and Axis Titles. So I'm going to click on this little arrow here. And I will see it brings up a little menu called Chart Title. Now that is the first I want to change. So I want to change the text from temperature to temperature over the last 7 days. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter and it will come up on the title. I now want to change this because it is the temperature. So the vertical axis, also known as the y-axis, these numbers are the temperature, but they've got an actual unit of measurement. This is degrees centigrade, which is how we measure temperature in the UK. So I'm going to click on this chart title button again, but this time I'm going to go to the vertical axis title. Okay, and I'm going to click on that. And this time I'm going to change it to temperature. So I'm going to type in the title text to temperature in degrees, capital C for Celsius. And you'll see it comes up there. I've now got a graph. So I'm just going to close my chart editor now. Now that I've completed one graph, you're going to want to copy this graph. There's 3 ways. You can right click on your mouse. Beg your pardon, you can't do it that way. You can go as long as the graph is selected, and you can see the little, it has been selected, I can go to Edit and Copy. Or I can select my graph and I can hold down the button on your keyboard called CTRL and press the C key at the same time as holding down the CTRL button. That also is a quick way of copying a graph and pasting it in a Google document. So what you now want to do is paste it into the Google document that you will find in this assignment. And that will be ready for the next lesson. Okay. I'm now going to shrink this in size because I want to create another graph. We're going to do another little bit of predicting. We're going to use the wind speed data. So let's select the wind speed data. Okay. Now I've got a problem. I want to select my days as well. And they're separated by this column of data here. So pay very close attention to what I'm about to do here. I want you to select your 7 days. Okay. I now want you to hold down a key on your button on your keyboard called the CTRL button. If you've got an Apple Mac, it'll be a funny shaped kind of, looks like a square but little circles at each corner. That's similar to the CTRL button. But if you've got the CTRL button on your keyboard, hold it down and then select these. Now, if you zoom in, you will see I've now selected these 7 cells here, including the blank one at the top, and I've also selected wind speed and these 7 cells, but these are white because they've not been selected, and that's happened because I held down that CTRL button. Okay, so next step, just to reduce the size of my screen, you can see I've got my graph for temperature. This time I want my wind speed graph. So let's go back over and create another graph. If you remember from the line graph, we're going to use the small insert chart button. I'm going to press on that again. And it's given us a bar graph again. And this time, I'm happy with it being a bar graph. But I want to change the title and the axis title. Okay, so let's go over to our chart editor. Now remember, if the chart editor has not appeared, you just got to double click on the graph and it'll make it pop up. And I want to change the title, so I need to go to the Customize again. Click on Customize. I'm now going to go down to Chart and Axis Titles. There we go. And vertical axis is the option it's giving me straight away. Well, we'll come back to that one. I want to change the chart title. So it's wind speed, but I want over the last 7 days. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter. And there it is, wind speed of the last 7 days. I also want to change this because it does say wind speed and the vertical axis or the y-axis, that is wind speed, but I don't know, is it 15 watts? Because wind speed can be used, there's a variety of ways we can measure wind speed. So in this case, if you were using the BBC website, it would be miles per hour. So let's scroll down to vertical axis title and put wind speed in mph, which stands for miles per hour. Okay, that's a short or an abbreviation of miles per hour, mph. And I'm going to click there. So now I've got my graph for wind speed over the last 7 days, and I've got my graph for temperature over the last 7 days. Right, we can do something, and in class I will show you what you can do with some of these other bits of data, but I'm only interested in these two. So you're going to want to copy this graph into your Google document that's in the assignment using the same technique I showed you for the temperature graph over here. So there's 2 ways. Select the graph and either go Edit, Copy, which will copy that graph, or go select it and do that CTRL C button, and that will copy it. And then paste it and Edit, Paste. Okay, so that concludes the job of how to turn our data into graphs. Once you've created your 2 graphs and they're in your Google document, you are ready. You completed this part of the task and you'll be ready for part 2, which will be analyzing your information.